Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Recently, I've been doing a lot of different videos regarding casting angles, casting accuracy, just how important casting is to your success on the water. And really, there's one more piece to the casting equation, in my opinion, that will help generate you a few extra bites. And that's how you place your bait in the water. Now, this is something that does not get talked about all that much, but it goes back a long, long ways for me. Growing up as a shallow water power fisherman, I've been flipping for a long time, and I've always thought to myself how important it is to place my bait in the water without making much splash. But I never really understood if it made a difference or not. But I can tell you there was a point where I remember watching a fishing tournament coverage show, and they were following Andy Morgan, and the commentators were making comments about how good Andy Morgan, one of the best shallow water fishermen of all time, how good he was placing his bait in the water without making a splash. And there was a little bit of discussion on the show between the commentators about whether that makes a difference or not to the fish. So they ended up asking Andy Morgan about it, and he said it very much did make a difference, and he wanted to place his bait in the water as quietly as possible. And I tend to agree with that. I really thought at that time, I'm like, it makes more sense for that to happen. But I got to tell you, it wasn't that much longer after that where I truly saw the effects of how important this is. So I was fishing a gin clear body of water up here in Wisconsin. I'm talking about a lake you can see down 20 feet of water when the conditions are right. And I was fishing shallow largemouth. There's a bunch of stumps, a bunch of laydowns, and it's the type of thing where you can go down the bank and the laydown's in 3 feet of water. It looks like it's in that much of water, but you look at it and go, there's not a fish there. I could see the fish. It's that clear. Like you're looking at it going, there's no fish. And you pitch your bait in there, and all of a sudden, you'd get bit or a fish would appear out of nowhere. And I remember very clearly going down this bank, and it's a very, it's a small lake, unpressured. There's fish all over the place. I remember going down this bank of laydowns and stumps and patches of lily pads. And I remember making some casts and some pitches where my bait hit the water hard, made a big splash. And I remember seeing fish when that would happen, the fish would just disperse out of that piece of cover, almost like there was something that, was chasing something and they were alarmed. So they got the heck out of there. But I can tell you at the same time, once I recognized that, I actually started doing an experiment where I would land my bait hard in the water on purpose. I would flip it up high in the air, let it hit. And when that happened, more times than not, the fish would scatter versus me getting a bite. When I would flip my bait in there and present it very nicely, where it basically created no splash at all, I set it right on the water, I would get bit. And the difference was when the bait hit hard, the fish scattered. When the bait landed in and it was like just a perfect dive into the water, like, when you're an Olympic diver trying to make zero splash, your bait just hits the water and you let it fall in. It was that stealth mode where the bass would swim right up to it. Now, in some instances, they didn't eat it, but they came to it. They wanted to see it. And it was such a clear thing for me early in my fishing to recognize the value of it. I had thought that there was value to it, but I'd never seen it for myself. I'd heard the great Andy Morgan talk about it, but until you see it for yourself, I couldn't specifically sit here and say that I felt like I should make a comment about this on the video. But after that single day on the water, I can assure you it makes a huge difference. I've seen it now a lot of times since then. And I would say, guys, go out. If you don't believe me, try it for yourself. Flip some baits high up in the water, see if the fish scatter or see if they come at it. So I want to point out the importance of how your casting placement is critical to creating a stealthy presentation that takes the fish by surprise, and therefore you get the reaction strikes out of them versus them dispersing and running from that motion that they're hearing. It does make a difference. It's not hard to do. It takes a little bit of practice, but one of the keys here is when you make your cast, you want to make a roll cast. You want to come from the side. You want to keep your bait as close to the water as possible. Now, this is not just for flipping. This really pertains to all casting. You throwing a spinner bait, you throwing a chatterbait, you throwing a crankbait, you flipping a jig. The fact here is An underhand roll cast allows you to keep your bait much lower to the water. And all you do is right before your bait hits the water, you stop your spool. And when I say stop it, I don't mean you just hit the line to create the bait, to hit the end of the line and bounce back, but you're basically trying to stop your spool, slow it, use your thumb, slow it down a little bit until you know that you've got enough line out there where your bait, right before it hits the water, you basically stop the momentum and you place it on the water. That's the whole goal here. You're trying to create a low altitude cast to the water where you stop the momentum as you place that bait in the water. You create zero splash, and it's a much better presentation to create reaction strikes. Now, I know a lot of you out there are probably saying, well, hey, I fish, deep offshore water, probably doesn't make much of an effect. It doesn't, in my opinion. This is more of a shallow water technique. If you're out there deep cranking a ledge in 20 feet of water, you need to make the longest cast possible, which means you're probably firing your bait much higher up in the air. You're going to create some splash, but you're fishing for fish that are on the bottom. They're not necessarily going to be hitting your bait as soon as it hits the water. So generally speaking, this is much better for shallow water presentations. If you're fishing in 10 foot of water or less, I would say it does make a difference. The other thing I'm going to point out here is I know some of you are questioning what I'm saying right now, and you're like, it doesn't make a difference at all. There is actually one time when I prefer to make a bigger commotion, and that's actually if I'm fishing around schooling fish. If you've got a lot of fish that are busting the surface, aggressively chasing shad, a lot of times for me, I want to make a bigger commotion when my bait hits the water because it draws the attention to my bait and it makes it sound as if my bait is being attacked. And a lot of times that draws other fish to it because they assume that they've got fish that are feeding in an area and they want to get in there. So if say I got a big spook on and they come up busting 100 feet from the boat and I fire it in there, a lot of times I'll actually try to make it slap the water to create a little bit of a commotion to separate my bait from all the other bait fish that are being attacked. It's actually a really good way to draw attention to it. The problem with that is if you're doing that in shallow water where you don't have schooling fish, generally you have fish that are set up in positions to attack or to ambush prey. And if you take them by surprise with a big slap in the water, you're going to spook them and they're going to get out of there before they come and attack your bait. So it really does make a difference. Get out there, grab your baits, do some underhand roll casts, some side casts, and practice placing your bait on the surface versus allowing it to make a splash. To me, I actually enjoy it because I envision my bait as that Olympic diver where when my bait makes the perfect entrance, I feel like I scored a 10 on that dive. So it's something that I do find to be entertaining while I'm out there catching fish. So guys, let me know your thoughts. Am I crazy on this? Or is this something that you guys tend to agree with as well? Because I truly believe this makes a big difference in your success rate on the water when you're fishing shallow water. So not only do you need to make accurate casts, make the correct type of cast, make the correct angle of a cast, you also need to present your bait and place it in the water in a manner that's going to help get you more bites. If you do all that, you're going to cover your casting, you're going to master that, and you're going to generate so many more bites on the water. So thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, new video coming out tomorrow.